whether it's your agents you work with in your area, your wholesaling, your biggest buyers you work with, hedge funds, like you can't just sell deals to the same 5 people.
Yeah.
You have to build a buyer's list every single day. Pretty much every month, we're right around 200 new qualified buyers in our buyer's list. So you have to keep doing that. You know, buyers fall off, they go on vacation, they stop investing, they move into a different market. Like, it's ever changing. There's always new investors. And if you just sell to the same 5 guys, they're going to know that. They're going to beat you up on price, and you got no leg to stand on because you got no process and no way of selling it to anybody else. So you got to spread a wide net in dispositions and always build a buyer's list every single day.
All right, you guys, welcome back to the Light It Up podcast. If you're new to this channel and you want to know everything there is about making money in real estate, selling, sales skills, building your business, or investing, then subscribe below, tap the bell for notifications so you can be the first to know what makes our great guests so successful.
Yep. Let's talk about adding leverage. So we've been getting a lot of calls of people asking us how we've hired virtual assistants to scale and leverage our business. So we've opened up our playbook to all of you. If you're looking to add leverage in your business, whether it's administrative support, ISA, outbound callers, go to addleverage.com and they'll be there to help you staffing your team.
All right, guys, excited about today's guest. We have with us Tony Mont. Tony, thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I know Mr. Eric Klein, my partner, was on. He referred me over here, said you guys were great. He had a good time on the podcast. So happy to join you.
We did have a good time with him.
Yeah.
We were. Yeah. There was some grunting and yelling and
it's funny because his office is on the other end of where I'm at in my office.
Yeah.
But even if I'm in my office with my door closed and there's a whole sales floor in between us and he's in his office with his door closed, I could still hear him screaming. I can hear him right now. He's talking to somebody on the phone or he's on a Zoom and he's screaming at the top of his lungs. So yeah, he's a loud, boisterous man, but I love him.
Yeah. Love it.
We'll put a plug real quick in here for anybody who wants to watch the Eric Klein episode. And now let's just jump into it. But first, let's do the lightning round.
All right. Am I going first?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Audio Jungle.
What important truth do very few people agree with on you?
Important truth that few people agree with on me? That is a weird question, but I'll answer it to the best of my ability.
Agree with you on.
Agree with me on.
So
a truth that people agree with me on.
Yeah.
Let me just say this. Like, I'm a big proponent of like just hard work and discipline, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a popular truth, but it's something I talk about all the time where like everybody's looking for an easy way out, a magic pill.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? How do you get in shape? How do you get up early? Why, how do you take a cold shower every day? How is it you work 50, 60 hours a week? Like, I don't want to do that, And I'm like, nobody wants to do that.
Right.
Like in our nature as humans. Yeah. I mean, I want to go hang out in the desert, drive my off-road truck. I want to go to the beach. I want to hang out too. But I know in order to do those things, it's delayed gratification. You have to put in all the hard work to do them. So when people ask me like, oh, how do I get in shape? How do I do this? The truth is it's just hard work. You got to be super disciplined. You got to eat good. You got to, exercise every single day. You can't, drink a lot, and it's something people hate to agree with, but they have to, because nobody's ever had a magic pill for being successful. It's just hard work.
Yeah. I think most of those people know what they need to do. They just don't want to hear it, or they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like, they want to do everything. They just don't do it. It's like you hear people say it all the time where they're like, oh, I woke up this morning, I went for a run, I worked out, I worked, I did this, I made all these calls today in the office. And it's like, I didn't want to do it. It's like, no, you wanted to do it. It was just hard.
Yeah.
Like you wanted to do it or else you wouldn't do it. You want to be successful. So you got to do the things that it takes to be successful.
Yeah. Love that. All right. If you can go back in time, what's one thing you'd tell your teenage self?
Oh, geez. Not to meet Eric Klein. We're staying on the Eric subject. I'm just totally kidding. Me and Eric have known each other for a long time. We used to get in a lot of trouble in our early 20s. My teenage years was really like around 16, 17 is when I started getting into a lot of trouble. And I wish I could have told myself, hey, if you continue down this path, you know, you're going to end up in jail. Your life's going to get really hard for a lot of years. And you can bypass that by not drinking too much, not doing drugs, and not hanging out with lunatics. And I did all those things instead. And it got me locked up for a little bit. And, you know, that kind of changed the trajectory of my life. So maybe everything happens for a reason, but I think I always had the potential in me. I just didn't have a lot of guidance. So I just needed somebody to help me guide me along the way. So maybe the real answer is just I should have told myself, you know, get a mentor, get somebody that can, you know, control you and your energy and your brain, and make sure you go in the right path instead of the wrong path.
Good answer.
Good answer.
What chance encounter changed your life forever?
Chance encounter changed my life forever. I will say that when I grew up in Rockford, Illinois. I was an electrician there, and I moved to Chicago for a little bit. And then I got into some trouble, spent a little time in county jail, had a trial. And then once the state told me, hey, you're free to go, you're off probation, we can't, handcuff you to the state or the county anymore. I literally packed my bags, went to California. And the only reason I picked San Diego was because it was the furthest place from where I was standing while I was looking at a map. And I was like, how can I get as far away from everybody as possible that I know? And I went out to California. I couldn't get a job, had a horrible arrest record. I had some misdemeanor convictions on my record. I was in a rough spot in my life. And I answered an ad on Craigslist back when, I don't know if you can still do this, but you used to be able to get gigs on there, meaning week or month long jobs, paid cash. So I started looking on Craigslist. There was this gig on there. This guy had just opened a bicycle shop at the beach in Pacific Beach. He's like, I need somebody here every morning at 6 a.m. You got to build 10 beach cruisers. I'll give you $100 cash, 5 days a week. And I was like, I need $500 a week. I can build beach cruisers, I'm sure. I've never built one, but I can do whatever, mechanically. So went in there. I was there an hour before he told me to be. He got in. I was the first person that was there for the interview. Called him, the rest of the day, telling him to hire me, and finally he hired me. And that really changed everything for me professionally. Stopped trying to do construction. I stuck with the bike shop. I ended up being partners with that guy, Scott Crampton. Shout out to Scott. Was partners with him for 13 years in the bike business. We built multiple retail shops all over, Southern California. We started direct importing bikes out of China. We went over to China, and that really changed everything for me. It taught me everything about entrepreneurship and being a business owner and growing teams and sales and everything. Awesome. And then that kind of went into what I do now, which is wholesaling.
That's awesome. Wicked, man. That's a good story.
Yeah.
Tony, what's one thing you regret not doing when you were younger?
One thing I regret not doing when I was younger, probably, I'm going to say something kind of dumb, but my grandparents spoke Italian and I never learned it. And I could have done better of trying to get them to speak it to me more than they did and try to learn it. And same with Spanish. I living in San Diego so long, I heard Italian a lot growing up. So picking up Spanish was pretty easy for me, but I'm not consistent with it. So it comes and goes. Yeah. But I wish I would have learned a second language.
I think that's something I could.
Do you speak Italian?
No.
No. Shame. You're
true American.
You've known me for this long. You think I had a hidden language?
I don't know.
It's a weird generational thing. My grandparents came over here when they were little, and they their parents didn't speak the English, but they were so proud. My grandparents raised American flag every single day of their lives at their house. They were super happy to be in America. They didn't want us speaking Italian. They didn't want us visiting Sicily or Italy. They're no, you're American. You speak English.
That's cool.
they were traditional in the fact we went to their house every Sunday. We had dinner every Sunday, all the traditional Italian stuff. But just like with the language and like visiting the old country, they didn't want any of that. So it was just kind of weird. My dad understood it, spoke it a little bit. They would speak a little bit of Italian to us and we would understand it, but it's not like we were able to speak it back to them. So it's just kind of weird generationally with them, because you see, Latinos come over here, the whole family speaks Spanish, like they're keeping it going.
Yeah.
I wish they did that back, in my grandparents' generation from Italians.
It's one of those things when you're young, like when you're a kid, you can learn like 3 languages at a time.
It's true. I just feel bad for both of you because you'll never know what it feels like to talk shit about somebody else in front of you in a different language. It's like the best thing in the world.
Even just with real estate, like I wish I could speak Spanish.
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand a little bit of it, but I'm not fluent by any means. But the Spanish that I remember is from one teacher in like 6th grade. And I took Spanish for probably 6 years after that, but didn't learn anything from those other teachers. But that one teacher in 6th grade that I hated the most
stuck with you.
She was the one who just made me.
It's one of those things. Like the best my Spanish ever was probably, oh God, me and Eric went down to Mexico probably on his like 35th or 36th birthday. So this might've been 6 or 7 years ago. And at the time I was taking a Spanish class at City College in San Diego. I was doing the Duolingo on my phone. I was taking private lessons, and my Spanish had gotten so good. Like I could go to Mexico. I was translating for Eric the whole time. I was speaking full conversations. And I remember being like, man, your Spanish is so good right now. Keep it up. And I didn't. And then you lose it. Like if it's not your first language, it just goes away.
Yeah.
So I'm in one of my goals this year is to get back into it. So I've been consistent with learning every day again. So hopefully I fix that.
Sweet, man.
There you go. Let's
jump right into it then. So Tony, can you share with us your role in TLC Home Buyers and everything that you do there?
Yeah, so I was on J.R. Clutch's podcast a few months ago, and I was explaining to him what I do, and he's like, oh, you're like a floor general. And I was like, yeah, that's a good term for it. Like I'm on the floor all day, every day, stand-up desk right in front of my team. So for the most part, Eric handles our closers and acquisitions. He trains them, he runs comps for them, and he takes over their calls for them, all that. So he's in front of that team. My team is dispositions. So as we lock up contracts on the acquisition side, I have a whole process on how we assign those contracts to investors. So we have an entire sales process in dispositions. I have 3 dispo agents and a dispo assistant, right in front of me. So I'm helping them all day. I'm taking over calls. I'm helping with buyers. I'm helping with sellers, any issues. And then transactions is to my left. And when they come into a situation they can't figure out, they come to me and pick my brain about it. And I usually can find a solution for it. So for me, I really like it because acquisitions comes to me with issues they need help with. Transactions comes to me with issues they need help with. And I'm helping my team as well. So I feel like I've learned a lot, not just for dispositions, but for the entire, wholesale space of I've learned a lot in every department so I can help as many people as possible, not just with my teams, but with other teams as well in my community.
Yeah. It's interesting because there's, in every business, there's the 3 pillars, the attract, convert, deliver. You're literally in the convert part of that pillar, right? So it's like you can get a shit kind of, or not, you can get a good deal coming in from acquisitions, but then there's a bunch of like red lining or red tape around it, and you have to sort it through to find a way to dispo it. And if transactions has an issue, you have to always find another way to creatively make it work with the end use buyer.
Yeah, I've definitely created that role for myself where I don't know if it's like this controlling piece of me or what it is, but when a deal, especially a big deal, is about ready to fall apart because of a major problem we can't overcome, I'm the first person to be like, let me just take that on. I'll figure it out. Like I have the confidence in figuring it out because no stone will be unturned with me trying to do that. And I've saved a lot of deals, for the company that got towards the end and we're like, man, this is a $70,000 deal. I don't think it's going to go through because of this, that, the other. Mm-hmm. And then I just start trying to figure it out, make phone calls, people I know in the industry, and just brainstorm and come up with creative ways to get deals done. And it's really helped. And it's, I've done that consistently now for a few years. And now I'm just really confident in it. So when we do have a problem, I'm like the first one that's like, let me take it on. Let me figure it out.
Yeah. How was the team set up 4 or 5 years ago? I mean, right now, obviously,
Well,
you
we've only
guys.
been doing this for 2.5 years. Almost 3 years.
Okay.
So yeah, so we're on year 3 right now. It'll be 3 years in May since we've been in business.
So take us back like 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, so it was literally, I mean, I was out in San Diego. Eric was down in Fort Lauderdale. He moved back to Illinois for a minute, thinking he wanted to, live up there, and quickly realized that that was a horrible decision, like I told him. But I was in San Diego. I was still running the bike shop, and he had this idea of wholesaling. He got it from a friend of his, a friend of ours, and he called me about it, and he's like, hey, I think this is a winner. Like, would you want to get involved in it? I said, absolutely. I'm ready for a change. And he got some leads coming in. He started getting people on the phone. He started locking up contracts. He was using another company to dispo those deals. And then eventually he's like, hey, me and Shyla, his wife, our other business partner, he's like, we're going to Raleigh, North Carolina. We're going to open an office there. We want you to join us. So I just packed everything and moved out kind of blindly without any real business plan, to be honest.
Yeah.
And came out here. And for the first few weeks, it was just me and Eric. And he was in the back office just locking up deals. I would sit with him, listen to him for a couple days. Then the third day I was there, I got on the phones and tried locking up deals. And literally the first call I ever made in wholesaling, I locked a deal up.
Nice.
And after that, it was like, all right, well, we don't need 2 closers and no dispo. Like if Eric's the man, he's the sales goat, he's locking all these deals up, no need for me to do so. So I just took on the responsibility of dispositions and trying to figure out how to sell these deals. And then we just slowly grew from there, hiring acquisitions, training them. Once the deal flow was enough, hired dispositions. And right now, Eric's got 4 closers, soon to be 5 next week. And I got 3 dispo and a dispo assistant. So we're going to consistently this year, our goal is to have 6 closers, 3 dispo, a dispo assistant, and keep cranking them out.
Wow.
Sweet, man.
So is it fair to say that 3 years ago, you didn't have any real estate experience?
0.
But like you said, you had business experience, entrepreneurial,
yeah. And I just have a motor, man. I've been a hard worker my whole life. I've excelled in everything I've ever done. And I didn't know it, but I ended up being really good at sales when I started the bike business. And I always attribute that to, coming from an Italian family where everybody's talking shit. You got to be quick-witted, you got to come back with them. You're always building rapport and relationships and all that. And working construction for so long, it's like you're on a construction site. That's all you do all day is talk, you know, and being from the Midwest, that's why I always say people from the Midwest are so warm and nice and personable, because for 6 months, you can't go outside. It's freaking freezing. So you spend most of those months inside playing cards, having a beer, shooting pool, and bullshitting with your friends. So I'm a talker, man. And when I got into the bike business, I had been doing construction for a long time. I'm like, I don't know how to sell bikes. I'm selling pink beach cruisers in California now. Like, who am I? But it just came super natural to me, just talking to people. And then I came up with, these sales techniques and process out there. We sold, I said 50,000 the other day, but I think it was around like 35,000 bikes in 13 years out of one primary bike shop. So sold a lot of bikes. Yeah. And it's just, it's funny because when I came over to this space, started working with Eric every day, all the sales stuff he was training, I was like, oh, that's exactly what I was doing person to person at my shop. I didn't even know there was a name for it. I just kind of trial and error figured it out. So coming over to this space, I had a lot of sales experience and confidence knowing I could, build a business from the ground up.
Wow, man. How did you dispo your first deal when you took that hat on?
The first deal I ever dispoed, it was a Cincinnati, Ohio deal. And it was a weird property. It was old farmhouse built in like 1890. And it was on this really cool hillside that overlooked a river. And we had no idea what this property was worth. I remember sitting with Eric. He's like, dude, I don't know. Should we even lock this thing up? Like, what is this? And I'm like, just lock it up. Like, I need deals. I need to figure this out. So I remember we were on the fence of even getting it under contract, but he did. And back then I didn't have a buyer's list. Like, I didn't have investor lift. I didn't have the MLS. I didn't have any buyers. I just started off. So all I did back then was cold call cash buyers and post properties on Facebook groups. So that first
By
property,
the way, that's what most dispo people do.
That's what they do to this day.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
not the right thing. Yeah. So I ended up posting this one on a Facebook group for a Cincinnati, Ohio real estate, group. And somebody reached out to me. Ended up getting them out there to walk the property and got it under contract, closed it out. We made 45 grand on that first one. And I found that buyer off of a Facebook group.
And you're like, shit, I would have to sell how many bikes to make 45 grand
to make this? Yeah, exactly. It would take me a month to make that.
Well, that was like our first wholesale deal. I think the first one we ever did was a 30 grand spread, but our second one was like 140.
Dang,
it was a big one.
That's a banger.
And we're both real estate agents, and our average commission check is 12,000, let's say. So that was 12 deals in one. And once we closed that one, I was like, yeah, I don't know about that residential real estate business anymore. I was like, I'm got my blinders on and I'm going wholesale all the way.
Right? Yeah, that's kind of how I felt when I got into this space, because I made good money in the bike business, but it wasn't like, crazy money. It was just like money where I didn't ever have to budget for anything. Like,
Sure.
I could travel whenever I wanted. I could buy whatever I wanted, but, I wasn't saving a ton of money, I should say.
Yeah.
But when I got into this space, I was like, well, it's the same amount of work, just, quadruple the money.
Yeah.
That's what I've said about being a real estate agent converting into a wholesaling business is you're still hunting for deals every day, right? As an agent, we're hunting for listings, or we're hunting for buyers, right? We would prefer the listing side. Instead of just listing the property, you just put it under contract, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And if there's not enough spread, then maybe you list it, or you give it to somebody on your team to list it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, it was one of those things too, coming over this space. I'm like, damn, I wish I would have started doing this, 15 years ago instead of, I was 37 when I got over here. Now I'm 40, but it's like, where would I be at now? But, the universe, has a plan for us all, I guess.
Yeah.
So what I think is really cool about you guys, and, compared to a lot of other wholesalers, is you guys are doing this nationwide, right? Like you mentioned before, you guys are based in North Carolina, and the first deal that you locked up was in Cincinnati, Ohio. So, I mean, me personally, there's times where I'm doing comps on a property that's, I don't know, 10 miles from my office, and I'm still struggling. I've been in the business 16, 17 years, and I'm still struggling to come up with comps just because it's a unique property. Nothing's really sold that's like it. It's got more bedrooms than the other, whatever it is. And I'm still struggling with comps. I mean, talk to us about how you guys are able to put these properties under contract in markets that, you don't really know that much about.
Yeah. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about virtually wholesaling, because once you come up with a process, you can repeat it in any market that you're in. Me and Eric primarily are the ones that run comps in our business right now. And when you do that, 30 times a day for 2.5 years, you get really good at it, and you get really good at seeing all these nuances instead of just being in one market in all these cookie cutter neighborhoods. It's like, we get properties very rural. We get them at the beach. We get them in the mountains. We get them in farm towns. So you got to get really creative with the way you're looking at comps and cash buys and all that. But that's the beautiful thing about virtually wholesaling. You can, shut down a market today and jump into another one tomorrow, just buy the data, and you can do deals there. So the thing is too, like, you can take a little bit more risk when you're running the comps too, because what's the worst that can happen if you get this property under contract that's not a deal? You have an inspection period where you can cancel. So we're not taking huge risks where we're like, there's no way we're getting rid of this deal. But there's sometimes where it's like, all right, there's this one comp that sold a year ago that makes this maybe a deal, like, and there's nothing for sale in this area. It's rural. Like, I think we can make this happen. So let's just lock it up. If we go through our process for 3 weeks and we can't find a buyer, we tell the seller, hey, this just isn't a good deal for us, and we can back out of it.
Yeah. Comparing it from the way that you guys started from the beginning, how has the dispo process changed now at scale?
Oh God, 180 degrees. So, we got into this space when the market was still going up, and you could roll out of bed and sell a deal, make 25 grand on it. Like, it was, all the big buyers were on everybody's list. They couldn't buy enough properties. They knew even if they got a slight discount on a deal, after they rehab it and the time it takes to get it on the market, it's going to be worth 5 to 10% more anyway. So the market was just going crazy. So we got into the space at that moment. So it was pretty easy to dispo a deal. Like, I could put it on a Facebook group. I could call 5 of the guys that were buying from me in that area, and they would buy it. They'd have a buddy that would buy it. So when the market shifted, what happened was, first of all, my whole dispo team got up and left because they're like, well, this is way harder than we thought it was going to be. Like, we're out of here. And it really forced me to get a really good process dialed in. It's when we started doing, KPIs for dispo and just dove deeper into the daily process of a deal where an action has to be taken on this deal every day where it's reaching more people. And one of the tactics we were using for rural deals was listing them on the flat fee MLS. So like if a deal just didn't have enough cash comps where we couldn't find investors out there, we would list them on the flat fee MLS. And now we had agents looking at these deals and calling us like, hey, I got a cash buyer for this deal, pay me some commissions. And we were able to get rid of some rural deals that way. So
or if nobody's calling, then you know that you're not in the right price point.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you can lower it. So when the market shifted, I got into the office. I was the only one on the dispo team at the time because everybody left. And it just like dawned on me. And I was like, well, if we're using the flat fee MLS for rural deals and none of our buyers are buying our deals anymore, we had like 20 something sitting. I was like, why don't we just get extensions on all of these and list all of them on the MLS? And that's what we did. We spent a couple of days listing every property, and they just started selling like hotcakes again. So where everybody else was like, shit, wholesaling's dead. None of our buyers, none of the hedge funds are buying anymore. We just pivoted to list everything on the MLS. And now all these new investors that didn't get opportunities for the last 5 years because everybody was outbidding them, they weren't on anybody's buyers list. They were using agents to find MLS deals. The MLS deals were going over asking from big buyers. So these guys could never get a deal. Now they could actually get into real estate. So they were buying deals, new investors were buying our deals using agents. We were paying a little bit of commissions, but they were paying higher than anybody because our main flippers were like, hey, I got 20 properties. I got to list and sell before I start buying again because I don't know what the hell's going to happen with this market now that, interest rates doubled. Yeah. So they all put everything on pause. And the new guys were like, these new guys were, they have 9 to 5 jobs. They're not looking to make a career out of it. They're like, well, shit, if I can make 20 grand on a flip twice a year, that's just money in my pocket. Sure. So they weren't trying to get these things so discounted. They weren't being greedy. They're like, shit, I can make 20 grand on this thing. I'll pay your price for it. And that's what happened. So we still do that to this day. Not every property, but a lot of our deals, we still find new investors on the MLS.
Let's take a step back for a second, because I think there's some people that are probably watching this saying, wait a second, how do you put a property you don't own on the MLS? So, I mean, I know the answer to that, but I'll let you, in your contract, talk to us about the language you have in there.
Yeah, there's a pre-marketing clause in our contract stating that we are allowed to list this on the multiple listing service on certain websites, just like Zillow, to pre-market the deal before it's closed. And they also sign a attorney in fact document, and then we can sign on behalf of the seller any, MLS documents. So disclosures and listing agreements and all that we can sign, Joe Seller, Tony Mont, AIF, TLC Home Buyers on the documents, and, list them not being the owner of the property. And it's perfectly legal. There's some different rules per different MLSs that you got to comply with. But the sellers are happy just to sell their home, and, we're happy to help them get them sold.
Yeah. Because I think that's something that some people would be like, wait a second, you can't just do that. List a property you don't own.
You can't do that. Yeah. It's funny too, because the number one question, like I've been talking about the flat fee now for like a year. And it's like, people like know me as this flat fee MLS guy, but people that reach out to me, their first question is, well, what happens when the seller sees the deal on the MLS? Don't they want to cancel? It's like, no, if you have the right rebuttals to these objections, and, make sense of it, then you're upfront with the seller, first of all, on the acquisition side, that this will be pre-marketed, there's very little pushback.
It's all mindset, right?
It's all mindset.
It's like a realtor saying like, what do you say to your seller when your seller says, I want you to do an open house every single weekend? It's like, well, I just do it. It's like, well, no, if you tell the seller, if you have the the mindset and the right response on how to handle that question of Mr. and Mrs. Seller. It doesn't make sense to do an open house every single weekend. And, we may do one in the beginning or whatever, but, like people are so scared because they oftentimes don't have a lot of transactions. They're scared to lose that one that they have.
Yeah, so
they don't learn how to handle the objection.
Yeah. And they get so scared about these objections, like you have to go in like so deep into an explanation. Most of these like quote unquote objections are just questions that the client's asking you in any sales, right? It's like if they ask you a question and you start thinking for the seller of like, oh, now they're upset or now they're going to not trust me or whatever,
Exactly.
then you're going to just, spit out too many words and confuse them even more.
Yeah,
So it's like, just treat it like a question. Like, why is my property listed on the MLS? Oh, just because just like when we went over the contract, we pre-market these properties as they're under contract to make our process more efficient. So we don't get bottlenecked at closing. We're trying to find an end buyer that'll buy the deal after we close with you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Short and simple. Yeah,
Exactly.
No, I love that. That's great.
And I'll give you guys so much credit for being able to do it remotely. It's like, I'm going to try to explain this the best way I can. A lot of times when, let's just say if you lock up a property to wholesale in your own market, you don't necessarily have to run over there for the showings. You don't necessarily have to run over there when you do the photography. You don't necessarily, but a lot of times we get caught up in the process and we do these things because, oh, well, I'll go on my way home, or it's only a mile away from the office, or it's 2 miles. But then, like, let's just say you go on vacation and you have to have somebody here remotely being able to do all that stuff for you. It still gets done. The deal still goes through. But a lot of times we get caught up in all this extra exercise because we're here. You guys being so far away from a lot of these properties you're selling, you have to be resourceful, right? So I imagine there's times where you're like, shit, like literally my hands are tied. I can't run over to this property in Cincinnati, Ohio and figure out why the guy can't get into the property, right? So you have to like be extra resourceful. It's like, I need to find a contractor over there. I need to find a locksmith. I need to find this. And, I just give you guys credit for that because you have to think outside the box that much more.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Like in wholesaling in general, you got to think outside the box a lot, because it's a lot of creative, ways to do real estate. And I'll give a shout out to the transaction team and Shyla because they handle a lot of that back end stuff where we got to schedule photos or we need a locksmith, we need a clean out. The house is boarded up. We got to find somebody with power tools that can go take photos and take a piece of plywood off of a door. Yeah. Like they handle all that stuff, and they keep a organized sheet of all the people we've worked with in these areas. So when we get another property there, they know who to call, they know who to trust to get out there, get photos, do whatever we got to do to make sure this process goes smooth for us and dispositions when we're trying to get a buyer out there to walk it.
Yeah. Tony, walk us through some of the mistakes that people should avoid that you learned the hard way.
Yeah. In wholesaling.
In this position. Yeah.
Yeah. So just putting too many eggs in one basket. Like I remember when like the hedge funds were buying like crazy and everybody was just salivating at these hedge funds. Like they were just being order takers for hedge funds. Hedge funds would say, hey, this is the criteria I want. And this is what I'm willing to pay. And a lot of these wholesale companies strictly bought data strictly for the hedge funds, nobody else. And they were just taking orders. They would get a property. They would just simply ask the seller, what do you want for the property? 250 grand. Okay, I'll call you right back. They'd call the hedge fund. What would you pay for this? 270. Okay, cool. Yep, I'll give you 250. Here's the property at 270. And you're not that's not a skill set. That is, a computer could do that. Yeah. So they weren't, developing a good sales process. They weren't getting good on the phones. They weren't getting good at comping or building teams. And I remember when I got wind of all this, I was like, man, this is like a deck of cards, a house of cards for these guys. Like if the hedge funds stop buying, what are you going to do? Yeah. So we were never heavy in the hedge fund game. And because of that, when the hedge funds stopped buying completely, we didn't panic because we're like, well, we only sell 2 deals a month to hedge funds anyway. Who cares? We buy all this other data and have all these other buyers. So whether it's your agents you work with in your area, your wholesaling, your biggest buyers you work with, hedge funds, like you can't just sell deals to the same 5 people.
Yeah.
You have to build a buyer's list every single day. In our office, we're adding buyers every day. Right now, we've added 7, 8, 9, 10. We've added over 10 buyers today to our buyers list. And pretty much every month, we're right around 200 new qualified buyers in our buyers list. So you have to keep doing that. You know, buyers fall off, they go on vacation, they stop investing, they move into a different market. Like, it's ever changing. There's always new investors. And if you just sell to the same 5 guys, they're going to know that. They're going to beat you up on price, and you got no leg to stand on because you got no process and no way of selling it to anybody else. So you got to spread a wide net in dispositions and always build a buyer's list every single day.
We were always taught, like, as real estate agents, when you're hunting for business, your business needs to come from at least 4 different sources, right? Like expireds, let's say for sale by owner, past clients, and probate, right? So that if the market changes and there's less expireds, it doesn't impact your business because you got 3 other sources. It should be like a table. There's 4 legs. Without one of those legs, the table is not supported. So I imagine it's the same thing in dispo, right? You got to have multiple different sources in case one dries up, like the hedge fund.
Of course.
Then you got other options.
And there's different platforms. Like if we solely just sold deals off of our buyers list in the CRM that we have, we would sell maybe half our deals, you know, but because we sell not only to our qualified buyers we've talked to that in our CRM, but we also pull cash buyer data on every single deal and call those new buyers on every deal to get them in our buyers list, sell them the deal. We have Investor Lift, which is a huge platform for dispositions, tons of buyers on there that we send the deals to. And we list a lot of the properties on the flat fee MLS. And every single month, you know, the percentages change on which platform works the best for selling deals, depending on our markets and what the market is doing. But every single month, a deal gets sold from one of those platforms or multiple on those platforms. So it's like, all right, would those deals get canceled? Maybe not, but they definitely wouldn't have gone for the price they went for because our highest offer was a buyer off the MLS as opposed to a buyer in our CRM. So you might have gotten rid of it, but your assignment fee would have been a lot lower. So yeah, you got to have, you know, all those different strategies to get rid of a deal.
Yeah. Have you figured out a way to close with a buyer from the MLS that's not cash? That would be financing?
Yeah. So we'll do you guys have heard of novations before.
Of course.
So we'll do some novation deals, which is an easier process to then find a buyer using a lender and not using an assignment contract. But even if you are wholesaling a deal with an assignment contract on the MLS and somebody comes with a conventional loan, if that lender does allow you to double close, a lot of times you can just double close that transaction. So you don't have to assign it. You could just close on your purchase agreement with the seller and then simultaneously close with the buyer if they allow that, if their lender allows that. So you got to be in direct communication with the broker and the lender to make sure everybody's on the same page for that. But you can double close those deals.
That's a good question.
Is there a way, like, let's say you're in, the property's acquired and it's a wholesale intent and it turns into an novation. What's that conversation like with the seller?
Yeah. So we just did one of those last month where we had a property that was in, you know, really decent shape, but it was in an area that there wasn't a lot of investors out there. There wasn't a lot of homes being flipped. It was a little more rural. And the house was in, you know, livable shape where it really was a house for an end buyer. And the price we were looking for, it was really an end buyer price. There was no real room in it for an investor. We kind of messed up the comps on that deal on the front end when we locked it up. So we just called the seller and we said, hey, we can either get a huge reduction on the price because there's no room to make any money on this investment, or we can keep the price the same. We're just going to need a little bit more time to close the deal. So we ended up pitching her that way of, you know, what's more important, like the time or the money? And she's like, well, I want what we agreed on. And we said, we can give that to you. We're just going to need to sign another contract and do this 60 days down the road. She agreed to that. We found an agent, got it listed. It just got listed, I think, last week, and we're starting to get calls on it.
Sweet. Talk to us about the different, you said you have 3 dispo agents on your team or dispo managers?
Yep.
How do you allocate deals to them? Is it just like levels of experience? Do you sign a kind of give this guy one and then, the next guy gets the next one, or are they geographically?
There's some nuances. Yeah, there's some nuances to it. I didn't want to do it geographically, really, because we all share a buyer's list, and I want everybody familiar with every market we're in. So really, the way it goes is like there's 31 deals in our dispo bucket right now. So everybody's got about 10 deals, okay? And like how quickly you sell your deals means you're going to get the next one. So say, King on my team assigns 2 deals today. Now he's at 8 deals and the other 2 are at 10 each. The next 2 deals that come over, he gets because he assigned 2. So he deserves the next ones in line. So the quicker you assign your deals, the more deals you're going to get because the next one in lines are yours, right? But say, everybody assigns a deal today and Monday morning comes around and 3 deals comes over. I'm going to look at what are my agents' KPIs for last week? How many deals have they assigned? Are they hitting their numbers? Are they doing everything they should be on these deals? Who's doing the best on the team right now? They're going to get the property with the biggest spread. Who's doing second best? They're going to get the second best spread. And who's doing third best? They're going to get, what's left over. So it's really performance based, like through and through. It's performance based. The quicker you get rid of deals, the more deals you get. And the better deals you get. If if deals come over and everybody needs one, the best person gets the best deal.
Yeah. So with Eric, I know that he has like the sales process for acquisition, like the putting them on hold for 2 times just to build up that wait time. Do you have? Well, this is a 2-part question. Do you have a similar process for the dispo? And what are some of the things that you would train on? So like, for example, with him, he's listening to the recordings. You could have done this better. What are some of the things that you're working with the dispo managers to train them on?
It's pretty similar. Eric helped us with our first script over here. I didn't know anything about building scripts, I just knew how to sell beach cruisers. So Eric helped us with our first script. He spent a couple of days tweaking it, gave it to me. I went over it and changed everything to kind of flow a little bit better for the buyer. And after that first script, I created a bunch more. I created scripts for every single scenario for the team. I just needed that structure. I created a reduction script when we need a reduction to get a deal done. Talking to agents off the MLS, talking to wholesalers off of Investor Lift, inbound, outbound, cold calling, all that stuff is in a script. So it's a similar process, a similar script. We do put buyers on hold to put them on ice. Some people do that a lot more than others on my team. That's why you got to just train every day and figure out what's going on. So Monday mornings, we do training every single day. And Monday mornings, I like to audit just our listings in general. So we'll just pull up the vibe screen. It'll be me and my 3 dispo agents. Now let's click on a random deal that they've sent out and they're working. I look at the title of it. I look at the body of the listing. I look at everything they put in an email. I look at how they send the deal out in the CRM, how they text it, who they've called, who they've emailed, how they send it out on Investor Lift. Is it put on the MLS? We look at the MLS listing, make sure that's good. So we're always tweaking our listings and our process on how we send deals out. Yeah. And then on Tuesdays, we literally open every deal, see the process on every deal. What's the good and bad about this deal? What's the action on it? What do we got to do? Do we got to reduce it? Do we got to just assign it at this lower amount and move on? Is there tenant issues? Is there title issues? Everything. So every deal gets touched on Tuesday. Wednesday, we do script and objection training. So I used to do script training and objection training on 2 different days, but then I realized it wasn't real life situations. So why not combine the 2? So now we do role playing with a script and objections. So, somebody's got the script, they're working it. They're talking to a buyer, that's doing a role play, and they're throwing objections at them the whole time. So it's more of a real conversation. And then on Thursdays, we do recording training, which people think like recording training, you got to sit there and, listen to the right recording. And that's the one you want to review with your team. Literally Thursday morning, I got in here like a half hour before anybody else. I was going to pull a few and see, maybe this one's better than the other one, but it just so happened Eric got here at the same time. And we just sat here and bullshitted for a half hour. I didn't do any pulling of any recordings. Yeah. So when my team got here, I just pulled up 2 random ones that were only less than 5 minutes long, right? And our recording training is an hour long. So most people would say, well, how the hell can you pull up 2 recordings with a total talk time of 7 minutes and go an hour. We went an hour and 5 or 10 minutes talking about those 2 recordings, because sometimes it's the short recordings where you can, give the most value of like, hey, this is what you did right, this is what you did wrong. On a recording that short, there was a lot of stuff they could have done better. And so it just depends. Like, I'll pull a half-hour recording, I'll pull a 10-minute, I'll pull a 2-minute. Like, it's different every time. And we just critique and teach that on Thursday mornings. And then Fridays, we go over what got canceled and what got assigned, why it got canceled, why it got assigned, what we can do better, and what we did good to get these assigned.
Dude, I love that. That's like an amazing structure to have there. Last question. I'm sorry. When the dispo process, what's one thing if someone's new to dispo and they're trying to get everything dialed in, what's one piece of advice that changed everything for you that you would suggest?
Your comps are your buyers, plain and simple. Your cash comps are your buyers. If there's people flipping houses in that neighborhood, there's buy and hold guys in that neighborhood that are buying cash. Look at that cash data and sell to those buyers. Those are your most likely investors that want your deal. If they're in the middle of a flip, a street over, what better than to buy this one, have both their crews working 1 street apart from each other?
It's true.
If they have a rental in the area they bought cash and is renting out, why not have another rental on that same street? So your comps are your buyers. Go deeper before you go wider in your cash buyer data. Instead of going 6 months, a year back, and then going 3 miles out, why not just stick to that neighborhood and go 3 years back and see who's bought cash in this area, and call them and text them and try and get on the line with them and sell them your deal.
That's great advice.
That's
really strong.
I literally had a piece of land in a neighborhood, and I was like, how do I dispo this? And I was like so lost. I was reaching out to like different people that wanted to do JVs. And then a buddy of mine was just like, why don't you look at all the ones that are already built and reach out to the builders? I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I think
those are the easiest ones, man. Those like track houses in neighborhoods where there's just an open lot.
Yep.
It's like, just call all the spec builders.
Yep.
And they're gonna want that lot because they know it's just a foolproof way of them making money.
They're probably looking for you. Yeah, they're probably trying to figure out who the owner of that vacant lot is.
Yeah.
It's all the data's there. Like, I paid this for this lot, I built this exact house, sold for this.
Yeah,
I could do the exact same thing here.
Totally scalable.
Yeah,
awesome,
sweet.
Man. Well, this has been great. Really, really appreciate you spending some time with us.
Yeah, man.
And you can tell Eric this episode was better than his.
Oh, it always is. It always is. But I'll tell him, but he already knows. And I do expect to get one of those nice stainless steel mugs you sent him too. So.
It's on its way, man.
Same address, just different name. Don't call me Eric this time, John. Make sure you put Tony on there so I get it.
We will.
I appreciate you guys, though. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Brother. If someone wants to connect with you, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah, Instagram. That's the only social media I have the capacity for. So the Tony Mont on Instagram is my Instagram handle. DM me, follow me. That's the way of getting a hold of me.
Sounds good, man.